Formula 1 season heats up as we are starting, of course, the final fourth of the season. So over here, we will take a look at the fourth sprint Grand Prix weekend of the season and our fourth sprint reaction to obviously the fourth sprint race. And I have to say, that as we will then turn around the Scuderia Red Retina IMAG, there are some very interesting developments as a result of the sprint, believe it or not, which of course is to me a great race. I greatly enjoyed. You obviously could have seen, for example, how I just snatched the victory, for example, from these Red Bull claws as the weekend progresses here at the Circuit of the Americas. Obviously celebrating the unlucky 13th year, since the Formula 1 came back to the United States at this very track on the outskirts of Austin in Texas, the true rodeo state, the kind of the lonely star state. So here in this exclusive race reaction or the sprint reaction, we will tell you everything about the sprint and why this was a brilliant opportunity for especially Lewis Hamilton, I think, to claim his second sprint victory for Scuderia Ferrari, and also the second sprint victory in Scuderia Ferrari's history. It's quite amazing if you consider who obviously the winner was, that he has won actually 12 times, and even if Hamilton would have won, he would still win 6 times more sprints in the history of Formula 1 than us as a whole team, which clearly shows that this is one of the Achilles tendons, I would say, ever since especially the sprints made it here onto the Formula 1 World Championship in 2021, in the legendary 2021 season. And I have to say that I just wish they also made the sprint championship, right, where you could fight for the similar trophy that obviously we do have, that Formula 1 the Drivers' Championship trophy, or Formula 1 the Constructors' trophy, because you can see with the differences of just 1 point, there would be extra more to play for. But now you can see, as we move over here to this North America, then we will go to the Central America, to Mexico, and then to Brazil, the South America, before going back to the departing city of Las Vegas, obviously in the North America. Once again, you can see that now the title challenge is really heating up, right? So the Orange McLarens, they have celebrated, their constructors title, the second in a row. Big disappointment for us as Scuderia Ferrari that we were unable, to stop them and break that long standing, now run of the consecutive seasons without the championship for us. But I'm sure, we are going to break it back. But that is definitely not gonna be if we qualify so badly. So the sprint qualifying, has set up quite a spicy, start, or I should say the sprint starting grid to the fourth sprint of the season. As you do know, you only have 12 minutes in sprint qualifying 1, 10 minutes in sprint qualifying 2, and only 8 minutes in sprint qualifying 3. You could see, how I claimed that sprint pole here at the Circuit of the Americas. Great performance by me, but less so obviously by the Ferrari drivers. Even though Lewis Hamilton was second in the sprint qualifying 1, and things obviously did look rosy. But you could see, for example, Charles Leclerc even struggling to get out of the sprint qualifying 1. Huge kerfuffle. This is kind of this 2025 season is kind of that the sprint, that the qualifying season, in a way of that the qualifying position matters a lot, because it's significantly more difficult to overtake than it was at the beginning, obviously, in the first the first couple of years of the ground effect era. Now in the final year of the ground effect era, it's very important to get a track position. And people were jostling for the track position. I think 5 or 6 cars didn't even get a lap in the sprint qualifying 1. I have to say I was really surprised, that the engineers with so much technology didn't time it better. Then the sprint qualifying 2, again medium tires, both for the first 2 sessions. I thought it went pretty well, from our perspective, but we could feel, that maybe running that lower downforce is not gonna, be that good. Actually, you could see, for example, from how I set up the car for the sprints, or especially for the hot laps, that you actually do need a bit more of a downforce, because you have a lot of these sweeping corners when you take them at 5th, 6th, 7th gear, and you do need all the downforce. And maybe having a lot of speed down the main straight is not that significant especially we still have the DRS for the final year in Formula 1. So if you just within a half a second or maybe 6/10 of a guy, you will be able to get him, especially as he has to go climb up the hill, which only obviously exacerbates that effect of the DRS. So we went to sprint qualifying 3. Big surprise that it was the first time from the two McLarens, Norris and Piastri, on pole position. Obviously, with then Russell there fourth, and then us only 8 and 10. Lewis Hamilton out qualifying Leclerc, once again showing his sprint prowess, but this was a total disaster, right? So you could see that even though of course the only, I guess, the silver lining, or the only maybe acceptable explanation would be that we are already focusing on 2026 and we want to dominate it, that kind of new Formula 1, right, or new engine Formula 1, as it will be just like, for example, Mercedes dominated when the engine significantly changed at the 2013 season. That can be I guess the only savior for the leadership of the Ferrari, because we cannot be qualifying that lowly. But actually it was great for us because we stay out of trouble. So as the red lights went out, obviously all of the fans, right, flying the American flags with the giant American flag there, at the end of the start and finish straight. You could see Verstappen getting good getaway, Norris, kind of botching up, and then you could see Piastri really attacking him. He obviously being the championship leader, wanted to assert the, kind of his position in the team, and then made what I definitely think was his uncharacteristic mistake. For us, we were kind of botched up, but because the funny thing is, when you start even a great position, like we started 8 and 10, you actually start like this way and then you turn left, right? So you can find out that if you do get a good start, you can actually go down the inside relatively easily, right? So normally if you start on a pole position, you will be closer to the inside, but here the way it is actually that even a great position, while dirtier, it still does enable you to ask, for example, Russell, who was one of the stars of the sprint, put it to send it into the turn 1, into that inside, and there's not that much the other guy can do unless you like Verstappen cut across the track. But obviously the McLarens were way behind him. But what happened was that as the two unfashionable orange cars were fighting, Piastri went for a switchback, but I think he just made that switch much too quickly, and obviously with Hülkenberg, the start of the qualifying, 4th place for Kick Sauber in that striking green car. I just wish it was a blue, turquoise blue. That would be one of the best looking cars. Like green is one of the worst looking cars. He was fighting it with that veteran Alonso over there. I guess they touched a little bit, and when Piastri basically did the switchback, he ran directly into Hülkenberg, who then bounced him off to Norris, and pretty much wiped out 4 cars, right up there. A lot of carbon fiber was flying, so the fact that we were in the middle of the pack, usually it kind of can put you into such trouble, but actually it meant that we were just able, it was kind of like that knockout derby, right, or like the rodeo derby, so to speak, boom boom boom, kind of a Formula 1 drivers playing the bumper cars. But yeah, both McLarens went out, obviously also Alonso and Hülkenberg didn't make it, and both Ferraris nicely went through, especially for Leclerc, who originally had to avoid the spinning Hülkenberg, but then he was able to just floor it, even overtook Hamilton, who was very lucky, by the way. Definitely check out some of the videos from the live feed from his cockpit. Yeah, I'm saying for the second time, Halo definitely, saved him from a serious injury, because, that carbon fiber flying from these orange cars from the childhood McLaren team, did hit his halo, because he just came in, really quickly, kind of reminiscent of what happened to Massa, right? Where basically Hamilton, I think, hardly noticed it. But yeah, he was ahead of Leclerc, right? And the fact that he was then behind, and we were running 4th and 5th behind Sainz, the former Ferrari driver, was a bit of a disadvantage, because Hamilton was, I think, clearly faster than Leclerc, who especially then made a mistake in the assist. And yeah, we've seen, then Hamilton, slipstream Charles. It was very close. Charles defended very, very hard. I thought, come on, it's a sprint, it's not necessary. Hamilton got ahead, but then surprisingly, he wasn't really able to mount the challenge on Sainz. Or what I thought was that he was actually saving the battery, saving the tires to attack him in the final 3 or 5 laps. That wasn't the case for George Russell, who suddenly found himself second. with Verstappen obviously saying, well, where are all the title contenders? I guess I can still go challenge for the Michael Schumacher's amazing record of 5 Formula 1 titles in a row. I really hope it doesn't happen, but now, I don't trust the orange cars. I think the gloves are off. They have their constructor standings, man, and they cannot be fighting, like this way and taking each other out. So, Russell obviously, because Verstappen was kind of eyeing his seat, so, Russell always has something to prove, and I was like, come on, let Barcelona happen again, right? When they both crash, and obviously they don't really like each other. Russell did dive bomb Verstappen, kind of, showing him his, oven recipe. Verstappen, of course, then run wide. It was very ambitious from Russell, but it is good, that he's one of the very few drivers who's kind of like, come on, let's go, let's have it. That's exactly, for example, how I race one of the most unfair drivers in the Formula 1 history. And it's a pity because I think, if they've taken each other out, we definitely would have been able to get Sainz. Instead, of course, it had to be Lance Stroll who is taking Ocon out with about 3-4 laps to go. And big carnage, both cars out, the recovery vehicle had to come onto the track, then carry them away, obviously, and that was the end of it because the race finished under the safety car, right? What happened to Abu Dhabi 2021? I believe, for one lap, of the sprint action, it would have been very, very exciting. Maybe Russell could mount a challenge, and maybe Hamilton could once again, at least make it on a sprint, podium, because, he would then be actually, I think, dicing it out with Verstappen over here, who, if I'm not mistaken, has won the second sprint race of the season, who would be dicing it out with him if he had that sprint championship, but that didn't happen, so it finished as follows. So everybody, let's take a look at it, and our beautiful Scuderia Red Retina iMac of how exactly it finished. Over here, so I'm sure you all can see it nice and clear. So this is our fourth sprint race of the season in the 2025-2025. So Max Verstappen winning under the safety car from George Russell, who once he dive bombed him and frankly speaking flat spotted his medium tires. He wasn't able to mount any extra challenge, but what a pity we didn't have at least one lap of the racing action, because that could have been really interesting. That's exactly what the racing should be about, right? Sometimes even though that you have a 10% of the chance of the overtake, try to make it, don't just follow the guy. This is Formula 1. Third, Carlos Sainz, he's receiving huge applause, again making it on the podium, the sprint podium, obviously following up from his Baku podium. He's on quite a run, I have to say, for Williams, and for us, I think the safety car, really came, meaning the second safety car really came at a disadvantage moment, because Lewis Hamilton was just getting within a second of Carlos Sainz. Obviously, he had to fight with Leclerc, who lost a couple of seconds when he made that mistake through the S's. He finished fifth, and I believe Hamilton generally is the quicker driver by about a 10 and a half, and he could have gotten Carlos Sainz. That would be very spicy to see, who will come out of the top. Obviously, Hamilton taking the Sainz's seat for the season. Sixth, and Alexander Albon, Sainz's teammate, so Williams running very strong here. 7, Yuki Tsunoda, he had the best start because he went from 18 to 7, but he was very lucky. He ran actually over the Hulkenberg's dislodged front wing, and he was lucky that it actually came out, because he was about to be overtaken by a whole bunch of the cars, but it just flew off. Hulkenberg then finally ran out of it. Definitely check out these highlights. That was a funny moment, and then Tsunoda, kept the position there. Andrea Kimi Antonelli for for at least a solitary point. He fought with Oliver Behrman, his former teammate, obviously at Prema Racing from last season, and Behrman went off the track, when Antonelli really sent it. One of my favorite overtaking spots is, that very difficult triple apex kind of, after, the second, third turn after the back straight, and, that was a great move there. The 9, then Liam Lawson, 10, Pierre Gasly, they obviously wouldn't score any points because we are talking about a sprint. So let's take a look at what this means for a championship. So the Drivers' Championship, we thought it was going to be between the McLaren drivers. maybe a bit overmanaged or micromanaged, we should say, by the McLaren leadership. But now look at this. Oscar Piastri is leading with 336 points. He didn't increase, obviously, his lead, and Lando Norris didn't cut or eaten into his lead because he's still on 314 points, and because they both were taken out, I believe what was a silly, maybe kind of impatient move by Piastri. If he made that switch back, I would say 3-4 seconds, later, probably it wouldn't have worked, but they at least would have had a chance. Probably a big tussle on a back straight, but this is what we call the experience and the inexperience in Piastri's case, which brings Max Verstappen, who is the reigning champion, on the run of 4 consecutive titles, 281 points, 55 points behind. So he made up actually quite a lot of points, and this is the danger for McLaren's, because we cannot be sure what will happen during the race. They should have the upper hand, but if Red Bull is really going to be competitive at every single track until the end of the season, the fact that Red Bull only technically has 1 driver, right, and McLaren's have 2, clearly gives a bit of an advantage to Verstappen, even though it's always easier to be leading. I just have to say that when I fought for the 2016 title, I was over about 70 points behind. I managed to overtake my illustrious teammate Sebastian Vettel at the time, but only on the last lap of the season, on the last race of the season, I should say. So definitely, we will see what happens. We hope that Verstappen will not be, challenging for that 5th consecutive title. That belongs to Michael Schumacher, right? And sometimes I was also almost 100 points behind, like in the 2023 to 2023 season, and then any retirement pretty much puts you out of it, right? So it looks like we could have the championship fight, but it still looks to be between Piastri and Norris. But again, who knows? If we get out of the North and Central America and go to the 5th, the penultimate sprint race, with Verstappen being much closer, then obviously everything is possible. 4th is then George Russell for Mercedes, 244 points, he still has a chance of claiming 3rd in the championship, depending how it goes. 5th, Charles Leclerc, Ferrari. I think we have to admit, probably we have to settle for 5th and 6th. Hopefully we can find some more pace and fight for the victories. We won this race obviously last year, so we should be competitive. We will probably have to change the setup a little bit, but during the race we were able to keep up, which is good news. Leclerc has 177 points, 6th Lewis Hamilton of Scuderia Ferrari, 130 points. Then we have a 7th, Andrea Kimi Antonelli Mercedes, 89 points. He's definitely going for 100, and he's dropping Alexander Albon of Williams, unlucky of late, 8th position, obviously 73 points there. 9th is then Isaac Hadjar Racing Bulls, 39 points. And look at this, 10 Carlos Sainz Williams, so 38 points. He's gotten 6 points over here, and look at him climbing up the table. It is really funny that for the 2/3 of the season, he was, I think, one of the biggest disappointments, and maybe the final 1/3 of the season. Look, we are not even, we just started the final 4th of the season, and he's almost right behind Albon, just showing, that Williams has a serious pace. 11, Nico Hülkenberg kicks over 37 points. He definitely was looking forward to snatching the 9th place, but sadly him. And 12th place, Fernando Alonso, Aston Martin, 36 points. That little bit kerfuffle, coming together with the McLarens definitely cost them the chance to stay in the top 10 of the championship. But by the end of the season, they might still be there. We will see. 13, Lance Stroll, Aston Martin, 32 points, and unable to out-qualify Alonso. It's getting a bit of a meme there. We will see if he can change it anytime soon. Then we have 14, Liam Lawson, Racing Bulls, 30 points. 15, Esteban Ocon, Haas, 28 points. Obviously, Haas is home race, but Ocon completely overshadowed by Oliver Behrman. So we will see what that means also for his future. 16 is then Yuki Tsunoda, Red Bull Racing, 22 points. And he's gotten some points to pull clear of. 17, Pierre Gasly, Alpine, 20 points. Then 18, Gabriel Bortoleto kicks over 18 points. Suddenly Hülkenberg is the star, right? Looked like the pendulum definitely swung in Bortoleto's favor. 19, we then have Oliver Behrman has 18 points. He definitely wanted that point, because then he would get out of the last place in the championship, because, well, of course, 20th, Franco Colapinto, Alpine, 0 points, and 21st, Jack Doohan, Alpine, 0 points, who didn't compete. we know why, they haven't scored any points in the season so far. With regards to the constructors table, so McLaren leading here with 650 points, title in a bag, and now it's all about the Drivers' Championship. Second place, so Mercedes 333 points. We made a bit of a ground. We are on 307 points because obviously, we scored 5 and 4, so 9 points. Ben scored 8 points. Hopefully, we can get ahead of them in qualifying. If we really improve the qualifying, I do believe, we would have been able, to win the race. Then fourth is Red Bull Racing, 300 points. With Verstappen's now unlikely title challenge, that brings them up into the play. But I do believe we have the two drivers who are capable of podiums and victories. Fifth, Williams, 111 points. Sixth, Racing Bull, 72 points. 7, Aston Martin, 68 points. Big fight between them. 8, Kick Sauber, 55 points. 9 has 46 points, and 10, I guess now Alpine, but still 20 points. That's still quite a lot. So yeah, we will see, how the title over here, how that will develop. I do believe that if we were able, if Hamilton was in front of Leclerc, so this was the constructor's table, driver's table, and yes, this is how the race finished here. With Verstappen, obviously winning and also scoring the fastest lap. Not a surprise when the race finished under the safety car. I do believe, that if we were able, especially with Hamilton, if he would have gotten ahead of Sainz, and if there was any contact between Russell and Verstappen, definitely we could have won. But I have to say, it was a rather disappointing start to the weekend, but nothing is lost. The sprint qualifying was terrible, but we completely managed to turn it around. So let's continue with the qualifying and the Grand Prix and go for our first, Grand Prix victory, because clearly the title contenders, they're gonna be banging wheels and braking suspension, and this is also our chance, because sadly we might not be in a fight, but it would be great, to celebrate, especially here at the Rodeo Land, where I might be celebrating obviously very, very soon. So definitely stay tuned, because in just a couple of hours we will release the United States, the Grand Prix race that I will do. I will be aiming for a victory, as you do know. I hope to put it on a pole position, I hope to win the race, and hope to win my 4th Formula 1 World Drivers' Championship! So wish to good luck to Jan, the Swan champion, and the Scarlet Red Scuderia Ferrari boys, as we chasing some titles over here in the home of the Texas Roadhouse, where we often celebrate our victory.